Hello lovelies, my name is Stephanie and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I wanted to do a video kind of doing really quick fire transgender terminology I think everyone could benefit from knowing. If you are someone who maybe wants to be a trans ally, then this would be a great video to watch in terms of terminology. I think when it comes to the general population, not everyone knows as much transgender terminology as they possibly should. So this week's video is going to be all about transgender terminology and the terminology of different transgender terms within the trans community. That was a lot of teas. That was a lot of teas. But before we get started, this video is of course part of my Transgender Awareness Week series, which means all of the proceeds for watching the adverts in this video are going to charity. Not a phase, very specific charity just there. Links are in the description, all that good stuff, you know it by now. But yes, the revenue gained from the monetization of these videos is going to Not a Phase, a transgender charity set up by Danny St. James and Jackie Devon. So please share these videos, please tweet them, Facebook them, Instagram them, because the more people that come and watch these videos, the more money that Not a Phase gets. So please do that and make sure to tag me and Not a Phase in all of those things. Okay, so first up, I wanted to start with a really simple one. The word is transgender. Transgender very loosely means having a gender identity that differs from your sex that you were assigned at birth. So for example, for myself, I was assigned male at birth, but my gender identity was female, and as I pursued it, I became a transgender person. It was a term that I kind of labelled myself with, and that is what transgender loosely means. Transgender is also an umbrella term. It encompasses many different people. There are facets from transsexual people who fall underneath the transgender umbrella, but it can also include people who maybe don't super strongly assign with a gender, who maybe aren't hyper-masculine, who maybe aren't hyper-feminine. So it is kind of an all-encompassing term, but that is what transgender means. Speaking of transsexual, the next word is transsexual. So transsexual as a term refers to transgender individuals who have pursued surgery or HRT, hormone replacement therapy, in order to change their physical self to align better with their gender identity. So that is what transsexual means, and those are the differences. I think there's a lot of confusion with that. I personally identify with both transsexual and transgender because I had put steps in place, taken hormones in order to present as my chosen gender identity, the one different from the one assigned at birth. So I do associate more with being a transsexual now, but it's really important to note that transsexual as a term is often used against trans people as a slur. So many people in the community do not like being referred to as transsexual, and I wouldn't recommend referring to a transgender person as a transsexual because it will not end well. No, it will not. But that is what transsexual means. Trans. Trans is the abbreviation of transgender or transsexual. It can also sometimes refer to transvestites, but those are people who are not underneath the trans umbrella because their gender identity is not actually different from their sexually assigned identity. They are just someone who enjoys dressing as the opposite gender, but trans encompasses the abbreviation of all three of those terms: transgender, transsexual, and transvestite. Next up is LGBTQ, or often styled as LGBTQ+. LGBTQ is an acronym that stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and either, depending on where you come from and depending on your history, stands for questioning or queer. For myself, I tend to think as the Q as queer because then it's all encompassing of everyone who could possibly fall in the umbrella of queer. But it's also important to note that questioning is really important because there are some individuals who have not yet figured out exactly kind of what they identify as. So I can see why the questioning is super important, but that's what it stands for, is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning or queer, depending on where you come from. The little plus sign that's just added is just to further express the all-encompassing nature of the Q and also the LGBT acronym. Next up is cisgender. So cisgender refers to a cisgendered individual. A cisgendered individual is someone whose gender identity aligns with their sex assigned at birth. So for example, if you are a straight male who has a gender identity of being male, then you are a cisgendered male. Similarly, if you were assigned female at birth and identify as female and live your life as a woman, then you are a cisgendered woman. So that is what cisgendered means. You cannot be cisgendered and trans at the same time. It's not how it works. Sorry. But that is what cisgendered means. TRA. TRA is another acronym that stands for Transgender Rights Activist, or Trans Rights Activist for someone who maybe is more associated with being transsexual than being transgender. But it stands for Trans Rights Activist, and it's an individual who is an activist and is out there spreading the word, making people aware of the trans rights movements, trans equality and things like that. So a trans rights activist is someone who goes out and actively campaigns for those things. I, for example, think of myself as a trans rights activist because I'm here hoping to educate other people on kind of trans things and trans issues and vlog my life as a trans person. So I consider myself a trans rights activist. Gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is a more complicated one. The overall definition of it is the feeling of unease when you suspect that your gender identity does not align with your sex assigned at birth and your physical sex. Most people who are trans and go down the medical route will be diagnosed with gender dysphoria, and it's a very interesting topic to kind of get into, but as this is just a very quick definition, gender dysphoria is, as I said, the feeling of unease or anxiety surrounding the fact that your gender identity does not align with the sex assigned at birth. SRS or GRS. These are both acronyms which actually stand for the same thing. It just depends kind of where you come from. I think it's like an American versus English thing. SRS stands for sexual reassignment surgery and GRS stands for gender reassignment surgery. I underwent gender reassignment surgery earlier this year. I call it gender reassignment surgery. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm British, maybe it's not, who knows? But I refer to it as gender reassignment surgery, and I went through that earlier this year. Now, GRS is the surgery that trans people can elect to have whether they want to or whether they don't want to, in which you have your physical sex, i.e. your genitalia, changed to reflect and represent yourself as your chosen gender identity. It's important to note that not all trans people want GRS or SRS, and this is referred to as Nonop. Nonop is the term used to describe a trans person who has decided that they do not want to undergo gender reassignment surgery. Pre-op. This refers to a transgender person or individual who has decided that they do want to go through gender reassignment surgery, but they are yet to have their surgery. It stands for pre-operative or pre-operation, meaning it's before you've had your operation. Post-op. A post-op transgender individual is someone who is post-operation, post-operative, so someone like myself who has undergone gender reassignment surgery and is now the other side of it, making me post-op. Trans ally. A trans ally is someone who is not necessarily a trans individual, but allies themselves with transgender views, transgender equality, and sometimes, and more often than not, this is the case, they're also active transgender activists. Trans allies are often not transgender, but you do get people who fall underneath the trans umbrella that also identify as trans allies. This can range anywhere from a gender non-binary individual to a cisgendered white male. It's completely opposite ends of the spectrum, but a trans ally is someone who maybe isn't necessarily trans, doesn't identify with being trans, but does ally themselves and support trans rights and trans equality. Gender neutral. Again, this is a very interesting one, something I would like to go more in depth with, but the idea of being gender neutral is the idea that your gender does not specifically assign with being male or specifically assign with being female, which means you're in the middle, which means you are gender neutral. It's like the middle zone of the two genders. It's the neutral zone. That's what gender neutral means. Pronouns. Pronouns are nouns that can be used as descriptors in conversation to refer to yourself or to refer to another individual. These can be gendered, such as the pronouns he, him, or her, hers, and she. But these can also be non-gender specific, such as they and them. These are used in conversation. For example, he went down the street can be changed to they went down the street. Pronouns can be the ones that you have kind of grown up with, or they can be the ones that you have changed to now. Everyone has pronouns, whether you're cisgendered or whether you're transgender, whether you're in the community or out of the community, everyone has pronouns. Misgendering. Misgendering means the misuse of pronouns or names for a trans individual, either intentionally or non. This can be very harmful to trans people. So for example, if someone has transitioned, maybe like myself, and it is a woman and associates with the her pronoun, but you call me the him pronoun, which I don't know how you would do. I mean, look at me, I'm gorgeous. But if you were to do that, you will have misgendered me. This is something that can have huge ramifications and massive, massive kind of personal and mental kind of backlash. Please never actively misgender people, and please, if you do accidentally misgender someone, apologise immediately. Like straight away. It can only get worse if you don't apologise. Non-binary is the term for an individual whose gender identity does not fit within the male and female binaries. This is someone who may or may not be gender neutral, but also may associate with a different gender entirely or no gender at all. And finally, just because I've talked about it quite a lot in this video, the last word is gender identity. So everyone has a gender identity. Gender identity is your own mental relationship to your gender, whether you have that strong feeling that you associate with being either male, female, or in between, or nowhere in between. That is your gender identity. So if you think to yourself, what gender am I? And you're strongly female, or you're strongly male, or you're strongly anything else in between, that is your gender identity. It's your own mental relationship to your gender. Everyone has a gender identity, even people who fall outside the realms of those gender binaries. They still have an identity, it's just maybe one that isn't confirmed or one that they can't really explain. So guys, that was a lot of talking. I'm really sorry about that. But that is some key transgender terminology that I hope you will be taking forwards in your life and maybe use for good. I really, really hope so. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this very short video. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something. If you did learn something, please comment just down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out the links to Not a Phase, the charity supported in this video, just in the description down below. Amazing. Thanks, lovelies. I hope you have a great day. Bye.